I'm Caroline. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, if I cough, something set off my asthma. I'll tell you something funny about it in a little bit. So I'm probably gonna be hacking through this whole thing, but it'll be all right. I got some water, and so anyway, I'm Caroline, I'm an alcoholic, and when he said, like, so I never say AA, I never turn down AA, because without that I would not have anything. But I one day did, it takes a minute to get my bearings just a little bit. So I normally don't say no, but it happened for a reason, and I'm grateful. And I said a prayer last night, and I knew if he couldn't find anybody that it was meant for me to do it. And but normally I never turn it down, because I wouldn't have anything without this program, and and without you guys. And so so my sobriety date is July 5th, 2004, and I'm very grateful for that. And well, actually, it's July 6th. July 5th was the last day that I drank. And then another thing, I took this book to work, because this is my notes from when I spoke a couple years ago, and I could not look at it all day. So I'm grateful we were busy, but I hadn't even looked at it, so I'm just going to kind of wing it. And so I'm so grateful for that, and I'm actually glad that happened that way. I mean, good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. I hope that's my sobriety date, one day at a time. And I say that not to leave the door open for anything, but at all. But I thought I had alcohol, and it had me. So I don't ever want to take it for granted. I don't ever want to stop growing in this thing. I don't want to ever stop learning. I don't ever want to stop being teachable. And I'm glad it was right after July 4th, because it's my Independence Day, and I am, and I'm very thankful for that. So a couple things. I'll just start off. My family, I grew up in Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina, and my brother, he actually came in 3 years before I did. And the first time I spoke, the first time I spoke was in the ladies' meeting over there. And back then, you could speak at like 6 months, and so I was new and green, and I probably know all those ladies in the men's, because I shared 2 or 3 times and did all that. And I looked back, and I was just so excited that I found something that could work. But when I came in and I first spoke, I felt like, even then after 6 months, I felt like that I needed to tell everybody, where what I had done, how many this I had, how many houses I had, and how many business I owned, and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is, I am a little Southern girl from Wake County. None of that's important. I'm a Southern girl from Wake County who made a mess of her life and found hope in this program. And so, and that's what really matters. And so, here's my story. So, my family, I grew up great. I'm very thankful for my childhood. My mom is an adult child of alcoholic. I'm the baby of 7. I have a twin, but she's 1 minute older, and I'm the baby. And then we were born 10 years from my other sister. So we pretty much grew up in the house by ourselves. And I am the baby now. Everybody that knows me knows I've milked that forever it's worth, but I can use the tools and stuff. And so I don't have to do that today. But I am, so anyway, so we grew up good. There was no alcohol in our house. My mama hated it. And so, and we, because she had to dry out my granddaddy, and she had to dry out my uncle, and my brother would say, she'd have 4 little boys running around, and they'd be up there hollering. And back then, she could give them a little bit at a time to kind of dry them out. Now, my uncle, who I looked up to, and when I grew up, he was already sober, but he was in AA in Raleigh. He died when he was 80, and so he came in when he was 50, so he was in AA for 30 years. So I am grateful for that and his example. And then, so it runs all through my family. And then my daddy's brother, he played in the minor leagues, and then he got accepted into the major leagues, but he had to come home. And back then, like, my mom didn't talk about anything. He just had to come home. But now I know, at 30 some years old, when I woke up and realized, I had a, raging alcohol problem, then we started talking about stuff. And so, but she just kind of just swept everything under the rug. But so it runs all through there. Now, out of the 7 children, there are, out of the 7 children, there are 3 of us are full-blown alcoholics. And now I'm grateful to say that all of us are sober, and they got more. The other 2, my twin is, and my other brother, and they got more time than I do. And then, and I'll get to that a little bit too, because that really saved my life. And then 2 are clinically depressed, and 2 are pretty normal. So I told Mama 2 out of 7 ain't bad. But we, so anyway, we grew up. And it went good, and just now my mama was really strict as far as like she was loving, and I grew up in church, and she was loving, and she did stuff for us, but like we couldn't, we went to a Christian school. I mean, we could wear makeup and stuff, but now we couldn't, it was like we couldn't go to like certain movies, we couldn't like do anything. Like I remember like in like 6th and 7th grade, everybody was going to see Grease and Roller Boogie, and we had to watch Sound of Music. I was like, oh my God, Mom, that's terrible. And so, but anyway, and we were like, it was crazy because we never missed I'm sure we did stuff, and then I know I look back now that I know a little bit about the disease, like she said, y'all never missed a curfew. You did what we told you to do. You were home by the time, and if the movie ran late, you'd call us. But when we went to college, so all through, I can see now that I look back, see the alcoholic behavior. Like, because my mama, I grew up with the best. I would not change a thing. She did the best. She did a great job, and she's full of grace and mercy, and she learned a lot of that through her children. She taught a Bible study for 40 years. I believe everything happens for a reason, and she did a great job. But I was just taught really early that like children are seen and not heard, and just look pretty, keep your mouth shut, and just don't be strong and be a steel magnolia, and so I was taught. So what that taught me though is to stuff everything and just to push it down, and then later of course I pickled that, and so so I was taught real early to kind of do that, and I remember I was like in I don't know, for 2nd or 3rd grade, my two best friends, Crystal and Amy, I was insecure, I guess, because my mama told me she loved me 10 times a day, and she'd pull us out of the pool if we finished, not if we won, but we ended up winning, and but still, it doesn't matter, but I would ask my 2 best friends, I'd say, are you still my best friend? Are you still my best friend? And they're like, well, we're not going to be if you keep asking us that. It's just even from an early age, now that I look at it, it's just trying to feel that. I knew my power since I was 6 years old. I went to church. I did accept that, but I don't know him like I do today. And I did not find him really until I was face to face with alcoholism. And I didn't, I did foxhole prayers, and then I prayed for things to work out like I wanted them to work out. And so, it just, that was just all during the thing. So we go on, and then, so when college, we get to college, I didn't even drink during college. Knock on wood, I think I drank 2 times, because here I am I'm a people pleaser. I am a classic Southern girl gonna please her mama and daddy and do that kind of thing. But I had in my head what they would be proud of me. If I'm homecoming queen, they'll love me. If I'm a cheerleader, they'll love me. If I'm pretty, they'll love me. If I weigh this certain weight, they'll love me. So I was bulimic, and so I did all that, and I did whatever cost to do that, and then I kind of taught my sister how to do it, and so I kind of regret that, but and then so through college, and then so I went to college to get my MRS degree, and I got it. I got married when I was a junior in college. I was 20 years old. And I was probably, Mama says I was probably about 17 in my mind. And she said, you were hell bent. We couldn't do anything to stop you. And my other sister, my older sister, who was 10 years older, had got married like the year before. So I was in love with love and getting married. I didn't know anything. I didn't even know who I was. a few years later, I was a manager in Greensboro, and I worked with girls. I hired girls that were 20 years old, and I was going, oh my God, I was just like that, So I didn't know anything. And so, but, I thought I did, and then I was married, and then, so then my twin at the time, so then she was by herself for the first time in her life. And so she was always used to looking after me. And so she wouldn't she could go to the mall and go places by herself, but she would not let me. She goes, you're too nice and you trust everybody and somebody's going to get you. And so I guess when I got married, that's when her drinking kind of escalated. And so anyway, I got married. I was married for about 5 years, and then so I drank. I think she came over one time, and I drank a little bit during that, and then I think she brought me something, and I got drunk, and then but that was just like one time. So then this is where it kind of starts picking up. So so I was 25 years old, and I was married. I'd been married 5 years. I had, it's like I was always looking for something. It was like I was always looking for an identity. I was always looking to, who I was. And I didn't feel good in my own skin. And I was always kind of just hooking it to something, And then, so I was spoiled. If I really own that, I was spoiled. And so we moved. By that time, I'd had my first store. And I'm grateful for that because, I thought I wanted babies, and I thought I'm grateful for that I did, at that time. And then not with him. And then he was, there was some, he didn't drink either, but there was some abuse and stuff. And, I don't know. I had my store. I remodeled the house. I did everything. Then I was just done, and I was just ready to go. And then my brother lived down here, and so I left. And like I said, there was some abuse. And then when I told my mom about it, but I thought that, I didn't tell her about it for 5 years. And I said, Mama, we're Southern Baptists. We don't believe in divorce. And she goes, we do if you're being hurt. She goes, yes. She said, she didn't know. And so we just, that kind of thing. But I'm owning a little bit of that too. I was spoiled. Nobody deserves that. Now let me clarify that at all. That's never any way to handle it, and no matter what. But I was, I was spoiled, and I was going to do things like I wanted to. But that it did help me learn that I could be a pretty good business person. I grew up in retail. My daddy had a business, so I loved retail. So that was good. So anyway, I ended up down here. Moved in with my brother. So at the time, did not know that he was on the tail end of his disease. He was in his glory on his disease, and so I didn't know that. And but it got me down here, and So anyway, so that is when I started. So I kind of boring for a little while, probably a couple months, and then one of his girlfriends, she said, "You got to get out." She goes, "You're just like boring. You just work and you just do this." And she just, she goes, "You act like you're like 80." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Okay." So then I started like going out to the bars and all that. So then, I started I was like, "Oh, well, this is pretty good," And so, then I started drinking, and and I could keep it in the road. And I was a heavy hitter for about 7 years. And I drank at normal times. I would drink, I knew when to cut it off, and that kind of thing. But I could definitely hold my liquor, and knock on wood then. And then, so then I was like, so that kind of stuff. So, and then, here again, I guess you'd call it chameleon. I don't know. I could be in the bars with the good old boys doing shots, and I'd be in a country club the next night. It's just like whatever you wanted me to be, I could be. And so that's what I did. And so I did that for a long time. And then, then my brother's disease, it escalated. And I think that was like 99. So, I didn't know what to do. And so I was like, and I was tied to him financially. We owned some property together. and everything. So then so I was like, what do? I'd call my mom at like 3 o'clock in the morning, like, Mama, oh my God, what am I going to do? You know, all I've done is own a store. I don't know what to do. So anyway, she made a few phone calls, and because of my experience and my history and I had some beauty pageant experience and all that stuff. She called, and I ended up in Greensboro and High Point, and I was a manager at Four Seasons Town Center with over the makeup and all that kind of stuff at Belk's. And so that's really when it started escalating. And then I met my son's dad then, and then I ended up, and then we ended up, he was from like High Point, Thomasville, so we ended up there. So all that happened, like, I'm kind of like I do everything fast. Like, I do it and think later, you know, and that's how I did, and I did everything. I opened 3 businesses that way, but I don't really recommend it today. I'm a little bit wiser, but, you know, and then, so anyway, we ended up, so then we were at High Point. It really escalated there, and then, you know, we were married a couple years before we had Cameron, and I am so grateful for Cameron. And I was, you know, I would be like, okay, this is, you know, the baby. I'll be happy if I have a baby, you know, and that kind of thing. Now I'm so grateful for that. He's the best thing I've ever done, so I am grateful for that. But so then we had Cameron. And I had postpartum depression. I did not know that, and that I did not know that I did. And that would be really easy for me to say, okay, I'm not an alcoholic. I just had postpartum, and I just drank too much, and I treated myself. And that's actually what the doctor told me. But thank God I didn't listen to her. I know enough about my disease. I know enough about that. If it didn't meet up with me then, it would have met up with me another time. Well, that's when it kind of got crazy. And I'm talking like, I remember thinking, I'm a heavy hitter now. I mean, I could do shots and stuff, and then it's so funny because people look at me and they think I drink wine. I hated wine. I'm a Jack Daniels, you know, straight up, no water. You know, I'm not drink wine if there's nothing else to drink. But you know, and I'm the kind that'll go. You know, I would go, and I remember even when we came here, I would go, and it was all about the appearance again. And I'd drink before I got there. You know, I answered all those questions on that little piece of paper out there. And you know, I'd go in and I'd be like, it's just all how it looked. And like, I would be like, I would drink the wine, but I'd go up and I'd say, oh, I'll go get my wine and I'll go get you a beer. And then I'd get up there and I'd look at the bartender and I'd like 2 shots of Jack Daniels, please. And I'd have that while they were making the drink. So, you know, then I'd come back with my wine and everything looked pretty. But we know how that, it wasn't pretty at the end at all. And so we did, that went on for a little while after I had Cameron. And I remember thinking, I'm grateful. When I got pregnant, I knew I was pregnant because red wine tasted like vinegar. So I knew that I was pregnant, and then everything made me sick. So I am grateful for that. But I remember after I had him, I couldn't wait to stop like feeding him so that I could like drink. I mean, I just couldn't wait. I mean, like I was counting the days. Like I was like, I'm going to drink. And it was on after that. I didn't black out before Cameron, but I blacked out after that. So then we, after about 6 months, we ended up having the opportunity to move back down here and have my store, which I'm very grateful for. Well, when we got down here, we came here during that time on vacation and to see my sister and see my family and stuff. So when I got down here and Cameron was 6 months old and I didn't have to be drug tested or anything, I decided that every day would be a vacation. And that last year, I know I drank every single day except for one. And then I remember working everything around him. Literally, I would drive back and forth till we got our house here. It was about a year before we had our house here, so I'd stay with my sister about 3 nights a week, so I wouldn't have to have him on the road all the time. And I remember just crazy stuff, like if my mother-in-law would keep him in Ashboro, I would already have something to drink, drop him off with her, and start drinking at 7:30 in the morning, like all the way down here. And so, I mean, I'm qualifying myself there because, I mean, I would just start drinking. I would think I would work it around him. And if I had to go back and get him, I'd say, okay, I'll stop at 2. That's my alcoholic thinking. I'll stop at 2 and I'll be okay. And then by 5, I'll be okay. And I can drive and I can go get him and stuff. And then, I mean, it was just crazy. Like everything, I would work around him. And of course, you know, if we go somewhere, I would lie and say I didn't feel good and let somebody else drive, but I'd be drunk. I mean, like, you know, and I would, just all that kind of stuff. And then I remember we were, let's see, okay, let me probably back up just a little bit. It just was crazy for about a year and a half. And, you know, I started to see, so I had my store, and then I was starting to, like, you know, my husband at the time was getting really mad. I mean, I would get somewhere and I would just be drunk. I mean, and he would just have to, like, he would have to just get me out of there, and then, you know, that kind of thing. And then we were, and like I said, I was work everything around Cameron. And then, and I would just drink, you know, and then when I'd get home, I would, and then my husband traveled, but I would put Cameron to sleep so I could start drinking. And then I would just drink till I passed out. So I had a lot of guilt over that. I didn't bond with him at like I wanted to then, because I would just kind of check out. And but so I remember, and it really just started escalating. And then my husband and I got in a bad fight. And that was in April of 2003. And we got in a bad fight, and okay, and here I'm qualifying myself again. And so we, because I think, you know, it won't, to see how crazy it was. And then so we were fussing over something. I mean, something we were fussing. And then I threw like a bottle of wine, and I threw some glass. And I was just mad as fire. And I remember blacking out, and I called my sister, and then I cut, again, I'm really qualifying here. I cut up all his golf shirts. I was mad as fire at him. And so I went and I took like a pocket knife and cut all his golf shirts. And then I had 2 bar stools in the kitchen, and I was mad. And I mean, I took a knife, and like I had a gash in the top of the bar stool. I mean, I was drunk. And then when I got divorced, I made Fred keep the bar stool. It was like 14 years after. I was like, you got to keep this bar stool till everything's done. But anyway, but I kept that bar stool so that I would remember like what, where alcohol took me. I kept that. And so I remember my mama drove up from Fuquay, and she called Drew, and she said, and he had been in the program 3 years, and she said, do you think she's an alcoholic? And Drew said, and I thought this is big for me, because this is the first glimpse I got of the program. This just still gives me chills today. My old brother would say, Mama, oh my God, you know, she's in Pinehurst like she wants to be. She's got her house like she wants to be. She's got her store. I mean, she's going to mess it up. You know, oh my God, I can't believe she's doing this. You know, that's what he would say. My old brother, my new brother with the program, he said, Mama, I can't tell you if she's an alcoholic. He said, but all I know is for my sister to act like that, she's spiritually sick. And that was the first, because he didn't judge me. He loved me. And so, you know, I started thinking about that. And so, and that was the first glimpse I got of the program. So I was sober. So I was sober 54 days by myself, because at this point I was scared I was going to lose my son. And my husband drank, but he didn't. And we drank a lot together. But when I stopped, he didn't drink as much. But I was terrified I was going to lose my son. So I was sober 54 days by myself. And I say that because that's very important. I mean, I did not have the serenity that I do today, because I didn't have you guys. I didn't have the tools, and I didn't have the program. I didn't have the design for living. And so I drank enough coffee to fill this room, and I was on edge all the time, and I was just a wreck, and I was white knuckling it. And so, of course, after 54 days, I went to a wedding. June 19th, and it was a business. It was like somebody I knew for business, so I felt like I needed to go. And I told my husband he didn't have to go, but I was mad at him because he didn't go, and it was just a mess. And so I was, so I went, and of course after the wedding was over here in Aberdeen, and then the reception was at National, and then so of course I stopped at the Fresh Market and drank what I could drink, on the way to the wedding, and then I was, at the wedding it was fine for a little bit while I was eating, and then here again, this Southern girl like appearance, because this is my alcoholic thinking. I drank most of that in the bathroom. I mean, so I would go. The bar was right near the bathroom, so I'd get a glass of wine, go in there and drink it, or pretend like I had to go outside. It was just a mess. So, I mean, I was like knee walking drunk after the end of it, and I drove home. I mean, of course, I thought I could throw up and make myself throw up, and then I could drive. So that's crazy. So anyway, and so it just started. So from the 19th, so there was about 3 weeks of just crazy and just blacking out and crazy, and and it just really started escalating after that. And I remember I told my friend Daria, I said, "Do you think I have a problem?" She goes, "So we hid it from everybody. Nobody really knew. Cameron's dad knew." And I was just like, and my mom knew, and, I just kind of hid it from everybody. And I went to the assessment nurse, and of course I lied to her, didn't tell her everything, just told her a little bit, and, that's what we do. And then just trying to candy coat it. And then she said I had postpartum, sent me to the doctor, and they gave me some medicine for postpartum and depression. Okay, now we're talking. Okay, so now that was lovely. And so you add all that, that was lovely. So you add all those up together. And so at the, I think toward the end, I think I stayed sober a couple of days before July 5th. And then I remember it was actually July 4th, it was on a Sunday. That night, our neighbor had a party. Cameron and his dad were over there. I ran back to the house to get something. And I remember thinking, it's July 4th, and I remember grabbing something by the table on the way out. And then went back to the house, got a lawn chair or something. I said, "Oh, I got one at home." And then I could not wait to get up the next morning and then I went, the first thing I did is went to the Fresh Market, and then I started work, and then I worked. And then that was like, I couldn't wait till they opened. I went there, brought everything to work. I left 2 or 3 times during the day. Went somewhere and drank like vodka because somebody said you couldn't smell it. They're wrong. I smelled like a cotton ball at the end. I mean, it was coming out my skin. I would lie, and everything. And then they're wrong about that. And then it was just crazy. And so that last day, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember, now a week before that, I want to back up just a little bit. That Sunday before, I took my son to church. My husband was playing golf, and I took him to Sunday school, and that's because that's what I knew to do. And so, but I remember I got home and started cooking lunch. I put him in his little pack and play, and then I could see myself not being able to. I didn't trust myself putting him in the car. I was getting scared because I knew I couldn't stop it. And I remember. Putting him in the pack and play, and I laid up on this bed that we still have, that I had when I was little, and I looked down at it, and because all I ever wanted was a baby and a family and my business, and to be back here, and I was absolutely miserable. It's an inside job, and I was absolutely miserable, and I just said, and I had tears down my eyes, and whatever I could muster up, I just said, God, protect him from me. And I did, because I didn't trust myself, and that I believe God started working then, because and I didn't pray for about 6 months before I got sober, and I share that because that came up to pass later, but is that 6. I don't know that if 2 things, either I knew I was going to drink that day and I felt shame, I didn't want to be accountable, and I was going to do what I wanted to, or I didn't feel worthy, and probably both. And so I believe, so I mustered a little prayer, and so a week later, everything's kind of got to get bad before it gets better, and so it just train wrecked out. I was so drunk that day. I drank all day. I would leave and think I had to buy something. I mean, it's a miracle I didn't get a ticket. I broke a bottle of barbecue sauce, and there were cops out there bringing the flag down. I didn't know what they were doing, but they didn't get me. So I was like, okay. And so I was like, I came home. I told my sister we needed the barbecue sauce. We went back to the store to get it, and I was like, put it on number 3. Put it on number 3. And then I kept going, and she goes, we are in my car. We are not in your car. She goes, and I really had gone back to the store to get some more mini bottles because I'd had them in the file cabinet. That's what I really did. So I was lying, and she goes, and by that time she goes, I know what you're doing. She goes, I feel like that I am looking at the mirror. I feel like I'm looking in the mirror 10 years ago. She goes, I know, and she goes, I'm just going to tell you this. She goes, this thing is a runaway train. She said, and you are about a month away from not giving a damn if he's in that car or not. And I still cry after 16 years. And so anyway, over that, it saved my life. And she didn't say it that nice. She probably grabbed me a little bit. It saved my life. And maybe Cameron's. And so I just, I remember calling her the next couple days, thinking, I said, did you see where I hid the mini bottles? I was terrified that he would find them in a shoebox or something and start and die, and get them and die, and so I was just terrified. And so anyway, she said, no, I didn't see you. You were hiding everything. I didn't see you. And so anyway, we found them later, and actually we found them probably about 6 months later. And so turns out I'm a true Southern Belle. We found them in the china cabinet. I was drunk as hell and still serving off the fine china. So, so we laugh about that today. But so that just started. And so what happened is when I called the assessment nurse and I was honest with her. And then she said it was 2 weeks before I could get into the therapist. And then, so then between that time we went to Atlanta where I buy for my business. Now I drank a lot in Atlanta. I used to say they pour it down your throat. They do not. I just knew who gave it out for. I'd say y'all can't do that for us. No, they don't. I knew who gave it out free. I knew who was having the parties. I knew when to go by. I knew everything. It turns out I didn't even notice that the last 10 years. I was too busy, I might want to know where the cheesecake was, but I didn't want to know where the liquor was. And then I bought too much. So it was like a vicious cycle. I guess that's why they want you to drink, because you buy too much. So I'd buy too much at the show. It was crazy. But I remember going with my ex-husband, and I remember, I think God stepped in then, and then because I remember sitting there and we went to eat afterwards, and I said, he said, and he was getting tired of it, and he said, but I'd stopped for a few days, at that time, and he said, okay, you can have one liquor drink, and no, one glass of wine. And I said, can I have one glass of wine and one liquor drink? And he said, okay. I said, and then something came over me. I said, I'm teasing. I said, I can't have any. I said, I can't have any. And so, and what I did before I got into the nurse, I still have it. It's a little leather checkbook thing. And I taped Cameron's picture inside, and I called my mama on every floor, and there's 18 floors. And and that was what I had to do to get through it until I got to the nurse. And then I'll never forget it as long as I live. I went and met with a lady. She had 19 years at the time, so she's probably got 30-some now. I met with her on a Monday. I don't think that's any coincidence. She said, I'm sharing my story tonight. Well, you're invited. So, she knew if she told me I needed to go, I wouldn't go. So it was right over there in that room. And every time I walk through those doors, even today, I feel a peace. I feel at home. Y'all taught me to, be quiet and listen. It gave me a design for living. I met some wonderful ladies in those rooms. I had some challenges too, and it all kind of worked out. but these, I had some growing pains, but it just, I mean, one thing after the other. I'm a decorator. I've never measured anything in my life. I just kind of eyeball it and kind of works. But I followed the directions and I did what they said. And then one day at a time, things started, it just started clicking, and I started feeling good in my skin. And then I remember I was about 9 months sober, and I remember let's see, I don't get off. Okay, I remember going to driving Cameron to church on Wednesday night, and he was, I mean, I got sober 2 weeks shy of his 2-year-old birthday. So he was, he was a little over 2.5, and he would go to the thing. We'd have a little, I'd go to the little Bible study and put him in the nursery and stuff. And I would, I was about 9 months sober, and I remember listening to one of my Christian songs, one of my spiritual songs, and it was, It Is Well With My Soul. And I remember started just quarter-sized tears going down my face, because for the first time since I could remember, I felt good in my own skin, and I felt like that this thing might work. And I had a peace that passed all understanding, and everything I was looking for in a bottle, I found in these rooms, and I found everything, and it's not in those. I've looked in all of them. It's not in there. And it is just, I'm so grateful for the Design for Living. I'm just going to share some of the pearls over the years. It's just, God has just, I'm so grateful just for everything. And there's no, it's amazing, like when you can see that everything almost went away, what you're grateful for. I remember just being grateful, and still now, like just to be able to pay the bills, or that the lights are on, or that we're warm, or that, not do I have this or do I have this. I still have an 80s microwave and it works. So I'm good. I call it vintage. I say it's my vintage kitchen, but it works. And so, I don't have to have all that stuff, and I'm so grateful. I probably have less now than I've ever had, but I'm happier. And don't get me wrong, I've been through a lot since I've been sober. I think in the first 2 years, Cameron broke his leg in 4 places. My daddy died and my brother died. And so but I didn't have to drink over it. And I had this wonderful sponsor, and I had people that just, rallied around me. I remember my first sponsor, who's still one of my best friends today. And I remember I said, my daddy was sick for a long time. He was on oxygen, but it's still hard, And I remember sitting in the recliner in my den, and I couldn't move for about an hour after they told me. And I called her, and I said, I just want to let you know, he did pass, but I'm okay. I'm okay, I'm okay, Well, she goes, okay. Well, yeah, she was there in like 30 minutes. So, that's how this works. And so I just, it's given me the tools. There is, especially during this COVID thing, there is no, and there is no reason why and I'm going to give credit where credit's due. There is no reason why my business should still be here. There's no reason why I should still have my house. There's no reason why anything, but for some reason God chose to spare me, and he chooses to provide every day, and I am truly grateful for that, and the lessons that it's taught me through everything. And just, if I laid in the bed every day and thought of everything I had to do or take care of or pay, I would not get out. I just pray for wisdom. I get up, I try to put a smile on my face, and I just try to do the best I can. And they hadn't ate me yet, so it's gonna, it's working. And so I just practice acceptance. Year 13, we laugh about that. One of my good friends, I've met some wonderful women in the program, and I have a great network today. We call year 13 my train wreck year. That's when I stayed sober, and that's when I went divorced. So if you don't remember, that's when I got divorced. So if you don't remember what your character defects are, go through a divorce. You'll remember them, and you will remember them for sure. And so, And I try to just take one day at a time, and let me just make sure I don't miss everything. I do step 10 a lot. if I snap or I'm short with somebody, I try to correct it. 6 and 7 are great. I remember my brother told me one time, he said, you can't fix something if you can't treat something. We don't fix anything. You can't treat something if you don't know what it is. And so that helped me a lot. And then like in 4 and 5, it was real easy for me to admit I made a mess of my life. It was hard for me to admit that I had affected other people. And so, but one day at a time, I don't have to do that. One day at a time, I don't have to be that mom anymore. When I'm just so grateful. And I had a few little points, and I'm gonna, 2 things on this. One, and I'll probably end on this last one, but the one time when I was working, I remember that. And this is what the program does for me. I love to look at how I used to react to things and how I handle them, like with the program. And this man came in and he said, by the time, my counter's not far from it's from here to there to the door. And by the time he got to me to the counter, he's like, and stuff like that just crawled all over me. He's like, man, you got a lot of stuff in here. How do you take inventory in here? How do you dust in here? What do you do with all this stuff? How do you stay in business? I'm like, oh my Lord. And I just smiled real big and I said, that's why we're having a sale. And I said, but what happened is his wife had already gone in the back. She was looking around. She actually bought right much stuff, but it was funny, but that's not even the point. What happened is the time he left, I said, what's your name? He said, Mr. Jack. I said, are y'all on vacation? And he goes, oh no. He said, no. He said, my wife's been at the home with sweets for two months. He said, I had a rare heart condition that there's only 2 surgeons in the country that can do it. One of them was here. And by the time he left, I said, I'm going to pray for you. And so my point is, if I had got in my way, I would have missed that blessing. And there was another lady one time, Miss Virginia, and she said, I remember I was doing inventory and I was busy and I was like, and I was letting her look around, and she was an older lady, and I said, and then something just told me to put the paper down and just talk to her, and I started talking to her, asked her how she was. She goes, most people act like I'm in the way. And that still brings tears to my eyes. And I said, can I hug you, Miss Virginia? I said, I need one probably better, more than you do. And so I would miss those blessings if I didn't listen to that and I didn't practice the program. And then one of my friends, she thought maybe her husband was an alcoholic. She was trying for me to tell her this was several years ago. I was trying to explain it to her the best I could, and I said, the best way I can think of is just, and I can only speak for myself. I said, if we talk about in the meetings and stuff, and sometimes people talk about like if they leave work and then they could like swing by Food Line or swing by something, get something to drink, come to the meeting in the morning, and nobody would know, and it would be okay, and they could just like keep on like what they're doing. And I was trying to explain that to her, and I said, I can only speak for myself, but even after 16 years, I said, that is so funny to me. I can't even like stop laughing just about myself, like, because we go to the 8:30 meetings, we laugh out at 7:30. I go at 8, and but we laugh about that, and we said, I said, if I walked out of here and got a glass of wine or got a bottle of wine, by lunch, everybody would know. And by 4 o'clock, there would be some reason I needed to go to Myrtle Beach. Even after 16 years, it would not take me 2 weeks. It would not take me 2 days. And she looked at me and she goes, that is so sad. And I said, honey, that's not sad. That's step 1. I said, what would be sad is if I didn't know it. And I said, I'm so grateful today, and I'm so grateful for y'all. And my name's Caroline. I'm an alcoholic, and thanks for letting me share.